Do you think that this reported settlement, Bill, and we don't know if it's going to happen, is in some way an attempt to buy corporate America's way out of responsibility?
Well, I'm not sure whether there's an ethical or moral underpinning to what they're trying to do. I think as a practical business matter, as a family and as a company that is probably well advised by bankruptcy lawyers and legal counsel, it does seem to be a wise thing to try to do. It's sort of like a little bit of game of chicken that they're playing, Brian. You can, when they lost the lawsuit, when they settled the lawsuit earlier this year in Oklahoma for around $275 million, a lot of people who are families of the victims of opioid abuse were very upset that they settled instead of actually going through a trial. Yesterday, of course, we know that Johnson & Johnson lost their trial in Oklahoma, and so it's not a surprise to me that as a result of that, the family quickly either leaked or the news broke about this potential $10 to $12 billion settlement, with the family giving up their equity in Purdue and it basically becoming a trust for the creditors. And so I think as a legal move, as a bankruptcy move, it makes a lot of sense. As far as the ethics and morals of that move, I think that's something that we all need to think about very carefully.
And how would you think about it, Bill?
Well, look, this crisis transcends Purdue. It transcends, it's across the whole industry. Obviously, we know the intensity with which these companies have marketed their drugs to doctors who then prescribe them to patients, knowing that there's probably an addiction element there. And frankly, it's not right that this happens. Settling lawsuits with shareholders' money is not the same thing as justice, Brian. It's very much in the same line as what happened during the financial crisis when all the big Wall Street banks, settled their cases using shareholder money. It's not the same thing as justice. It just isn't.
No, it's not, because in many views, Bill, justice is somebody or somebody's being held maybe even criminally responsible for this. And to your point, I think at the top, there is a view that with these settlements and with this effective bankruptcy, if you will, on that side of the coin, on the Sackler side, it makes it less likely that we will see anybody brought to justice from a criminal perspective. Do you believe that will be the case?
Absolutely. If they file for bankruptcy and they quote unquote settle, if they in fact take this deal that they're being offered of $10 to $12 billion, that'll effectively end, I believe, many of the lawsuits against the family. I don't know if it'll solve the criminal complaints to the extent that there are any, but it does make much, just like with, again, on Wall Street, when JP Morgan pays $13 billion to settle mortgage-related behavior during the financial crisis. That was it. That was the end of it. And there was nobody was going to be held accountable further. No individual was going to go to jail. And the same thing probably will happen here. If in fact the settlement is taken, or even if they file for bankruptcy, it's going to be very tough to get anybody to be held personally accountable for what happened here.
And you go down the line, Bill, and I said something, I don't know, about 12 years ago during the height of the financial crisis. I said, and I got so much blowback for it. I said, do realtors sort of bear any responsibility here? They're the ones sort of on the front lines of, homes being sold for 15, 20 times income with no money down, the ninja loans, if you remember those, and I'm sure you do.
Of course.
If you read books like American Pain or others, you realize that a lot of doctors are culpable here. We think of doctors as a super trustworthy. But a lot of doctors are compromised. They've got gambling debts. They've got expensive divorces, loans. Maybe they're addicts themselves. I mean, so is there any kind of frontline responsibility here as well, Bill?
Again, Brian, just like in the financial crisis with traders and underwriters who provided these mortgage-backed securities, co-opted the rating agencies to give them AAA rated, to make them AAA rated when they knew that they weren't. Do any of those people bear responsibility? Of course. But the way corporate law works is they were shielded by their corporate veil, by the corporate governance, by the corporate structure. And I think that's exactly the same thing that's going to happen here, because that's the way the system works. And unfortunately, as we were just talking about, that is not the same as justice. It just isn't. Yeah. We like to have people held responsible for their wrongdoing. Doctors, salesmen, executives of Purdue Pharmaceutical or other companies that were responsible for this, but just doesn't seem to happen that much anymore.